started. Welcome. Looks like I'm sitting a little lower today. It's funny. All right. Welcome. So the name of our meeting is Relax into Health, Wealth, and Happiness. And we can look and see what if we were just to accept that that's a presently available reality. So just imagine for a moment that it really is truly a presently available reality that you can simply relax into health, wealth, and happiness now. So then what, now you might say, well, what's the point of what's the point of that? What's the point of imagining that? Because you say, well, it's not happening. So the invitation is to look and see, just slow down for a moment right now. So everything happens very quickly when we're in, there's a habitual mode, habitual state. It is a state that, because it's habitual, we are habituated to it, so we don't recognize how fast it is. But it's like if you're in the same room with like a refrigerator, something that has a compressor that's running, and after a while you tune it out, you don't even notice it until it stops. When it stops, then all of a sudden you notice, because all of a sudden it's very quiet. So in a very similar way, there's this white noise all the time of the fastness, the speed, the sense of urgency, the distress that's happening almost all the time. And of course, we notice it in some sense, right? Because we notice that we're uncomfortable, but we don't really understand what that discomfort is. We have all kinds of stories about it, but we don't really have clarity on what it is. And I'm pointing it out so that we can just see it right now. So just be willing to slow down. You don't have to know how to slow down. If you're trying to figure out how to slow down, you're not slowing down. And to slow down means you just simply accept that you can slow down now. So you look and just see that if you're willing to slow down just a little bit, maybe a lot, any amount, you just slow down. Just become inwardly restful. Now, you can't force that, obviously. I mean, I say it's obvious, but we don't notice that until somebody points it out. So you might find that your tendency, your habit is to try to use force. I will slow down, but that doesn't work. That just increases the sense of urgency and the tension and the distress and the fastness, actually. Because there's something, and I've talked about this recently, there's this phenomenon in the physiology or neurology, physioneurology, called the stretch reflex. It's the these neurons that send a signal from the muscle back to the central nervous system that alert the brain, essentially, that the muscle is being lengthened, is the most highly myelinated in the body, which means that it's the fastest. So this is a signal that the body gives enormous priority to. So we should be curious about that. And the stretch reflex is that when that signal comes back that the muscle is being lengthened, instantly and reflexively, unconsciously, a signal is sent back saying, contract even harder, because this is alarming. Imagine the scenarios historically from an evolutionary standpoint in which the muscles are being lengthened forcibly from the outside. You can imagine the majority of those are not going to be beneficial for the organism. It involves being torn apart. So this is a self-protective mechanism. Protect, contract. So whenever we use force in any way, it doesn't matter if it's just physical, because hopefully it will become clear to you, if it's not already, that it's all one thing. The physical, mental, emotional, it's all one thing. You can't have an emotion without a feeling. You can't have a feeling without an action. There's something that you're doing. You may not be aware of it because it's unconscious, but it's something that you're doing. In the same way, that stretch reflex is something that you're doing. It may be unconscious, but it does happen, and it's a happening that your body is doing. So this is why it's an awareness game. We have to become aware of how it is that we are doing and what we're doing that we've been imagining was something being done to us. Okay, so we're wanting to become aware of what we're doing that previously we wrongly imagined was being done to us. And in order for that to happen, we have to slow down. So when I say slow down, then notice how you attempt to slow down. So usually, unless you have some practice at it and you've developed some skill, the normal way is an inefficient, ineffective way, which is to try to use force. So it's like, you imagine, okay, here's an analogy. You can imagine that you're driving a car. Hopefully it will be most useful if you've had the experience of driving a car. So I'm hopeful that you've had that experience. If not, I don't know, you can imagine something else. But you can imagine that you're driving a car. And so if you've driven a car, you know that generally speaking, cars have two, assume it's an automatic transmission. You've got two pedals. So one is the accelerator and one is the brake. So normally we apply only pressure to one of the two at a time, not both. So now I want you to imagine that you're driving the car and you've got your foot on the accelerator. So you know what that's like, right? You know that if you push more on the accelerator, you're going to get more fuel to the engine's going to go faster, to simplify it. Okay, so now imagine that you're driving this car and you've got your foot on the accelerator and you realize, this is something, something about this is not good. I don't want to be doing, I don't like this experience. I don't like where I'm headed. I just don't like the experience. Something about it, I don't feel good. I want to change this experience. So now you want to slow down. Let's imagine somebody even says, hey, slow down, danger, slow down. So you now, I want you to imagine you don't take your foot off of the accelerator. Instead, you keep your foot on the accelerator and maybe you even push on the accelerator even more, but you also simultaneously apply pressure to the brake pedal. So will it work? Sort of, right? it will sort of work, because as long as you can apply, as long as the brake can overcome the force of the engine, then it will cause the vehicle to come to a stop, or at least to slow down. But is it efficient? No. Is it safe? No. Is it healthy? If a car can be healthy, let's see. Is it good for the car? Is it good for the vehicle? Hopefully, you don't have to be a mechanic to know the answer to that. It's not good for the car. So what would be a better way? Well, I mean, it's obvious, right? You take your foot off of the accelerator and you put your foot on the brake, right? So we only apply one, not the other. But now notice how we do our life. We do our life, and we're headed for a disaster. We're accelerating. We're putting more and more energy into it. We're becoming more and more frantic and distressed. Somebody says, stop. And so we do the equivalent of keeping one foot on the accelerator while we put the other foot on the brake. Doesn't work very well. So this is something that it's remarkable, really, how few people recognize this. But once you see it, you can't really unsee it, because it's just so true. You start to see that you're doing everything in your life. So it's like you really are in control. You've got, metaphorically, you've got one foot on the accelerator. You're doing all of this. But you've forgotten about that, because you're also trying to do the opposite. You're trying to stop, metaphorically. So now you're fighting against yourself. And you can feel that fight. You can feel that struggle. You can feel that tension, that conflict within yourself every time that you try to do anything differently. Or really, at a certain point, if you try to do anything at all, forget about even differently, if you just try to do anything, you can't do it without pain. You can't do it without depression. You can't do it without anxiety. You can't do it without enormous fatigue. Well, we have generally been taught that's just how it is. You can see that that's what's shown to us. We've got so many, we're told, well, it's just a luck of the draw. This whole life is just a crapshoot, and so you just got what you got. Or we're told, well, it's just too late for you. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. You just got screwed up early on, and now there's no fixing it. Sorry for you. Or we're told, well, that's just the nature of life, is that it is suffering, right? This is like a very naive misinterpretation of Buddhism. Life is just suffering, and so there you go. Or take like a Christian view. Often it's just a sort of a religious view, generally, is that, well, life is suffering, maybe for a reason, maybe not for a reason, but there's hope in the future, after the afterlife. But there's nothing you can do about it now, so just accept your fate. And, it's probably because of you're being punished for some past thing, for whatever that, some sin of some kind. Well, just look to your experience and see how you accept these things. These ideas are part of the conditioning, part of the programming that keeps it all in place. So what we're wanting to see here is something very, very different, very different. And it's because it's so different, we really can't hear it actually for a long time. We think we hear it, but you've probably had this experience where you thought you heard, you thought you understood, maybe you've attended these meetings for months or years and you think, I understand, I get it. I've heard these words, I understand the words, I've applied them, I've seen something for myself, and so I get it. And then something clicks and you realize, oh, I didn't understand it at all, but now I understand. Well, um, a more profitable way to approach this is not to aim for that kind of understanding, but rather to be surrendered to the process, to be fully engaged, not looking to get some outcome in the future. Because you notice how that's how, when we say, I understand and I've applied it, we think, well, there's something to be gotten and I've gotten it, or I've almost gotten it, or I'm on the way to getting it. But that keeps you like chasing after the carrot on the stick. So you never arrive, you're just constantly chasing, which is, there are worse situations to find yourself in, but we can improve upon that, which is notice that chasing, notice that instability now, and the sense of not being centered, not being at rest, not being at ease, but a sense of lack, that something's off, something's missing, something's needed. And where is that going to be found? Well, logically, the only place it can be found, logically, logic is about sequence and time. So logically, we know, well, the past is gone. The present isn't delivering. So it's got to be in the future. So you see, what we do is we orient ourselves to the future and we're waiting for something. Now, this waiting means I'm unsafe. It creates this setup in the nervous system. I'm unsafe. I'm not quite there yet. So I'm vulnerable. I have to protect. So I'm on edge. I'm waiting. I'm guarded. Now we can try to talk a fancy talk, and we can think that we've understood things that we think should counteract that. But if we tell the truth, it isn't working. If we tell the truth, all we got was some intellectual stimulation. We got some temporary hit on our, increase in our pride, or some temporary experience, but it comes and goes. So we come back to our baseline of distress and unhappiness and instability because of our outlook, how we're approaching it. We're looking to get something. But please understand, what I'm pointing to is that when we're looking to get something, what this is a setup for, implicit in this is that that there's something lacking now. Otherwise, why would we be waiting for something? Why would we be looking for something? Why would we be seeking for something? The only reason to be looking for something, whether this is big looking or little looking, it doesn't matter. The only reason, as far as the nervous system is concerned, is because there's something essential that's lacking now. If you have everything that's needed, if you are 100% complete now, then there is nothing that you're going to be looking for in that sense. You won't be looking for anything in the future, because because the nervous system is not looking for it. It doesn't sense any lack. So there's no reason to look for anything. But you see, we're also accustomed, habituated to this incorrect way. Let's not say incorrect, unprofitable way of of approaching the game. So let's look at life like a game. Let's make it a low stakes game. We could play at high stakes. That's not a bad or wrong way to do it. But for our purposes right now, so that we can actually observe, let's make it low stakes. Because when it's high stakes, we make a lot more mistakes because we have a lot more investment, and a lot more on the line. But you can see how if you make it low stakes, then you're free to learn, right? If it's low stakes, you're free to admit to the mistakes. You don't have to defend anything. It's low stakes. You're putting yourself in the position of being a student, in a learning position. You're saying, I'm here to learn. I'm not the master. I'm just here to learn. I'm here to improve. So I want to learn. I want to see my mistakes, and I want to learn from them so that I don't repeat the same mistakes. If we just if that's our aim, if that's our intention, if that's our how we play the game, well, wow, what a difference that makes. Now suddenly it's a setup for success. We can win at that. Doesn't mean we have to win the game as we understand whatever rules we think the high stakes version of the game has. But if we're just playing the low stakes version, then the only point is to be present and learn. That's it. So let's play it that way, low stakes. So now, see how different this is. Now you can really slow down. So now instead of, I've got to get it right, I've got to get it right, it's all, everything's on the line, it's high stakes. If I screw this up, I'm really screwed. Really, really, really in trouble. Instead of that, which is the way we've normally been playing the game, there's nothing on the line here. I'm just playing to learn, to see my mistakes, to see how I misunderstand. So you can just watch, okay, bringing it back to where we started. This is, we're really wanting to explore this possibility. We're inviting ourselves to open to the possibility, or the reality, actually, that we can relax into health, wealth, and happiness now, so that it's not we don't have to wait for anything. There's no condition. We can relax into health, wealth, and happiness now. So now notice if we play it in this low stakes way, what is possible is just simply to look and see how I am reacting to this invitation. So the game is just an invitation. Hopefully you can see how that's true, that in a sense, all of life is a game. So it's not even really, it's actually just true. You can see that, like, what is a game? A game is when we make up some rules, and then we follow those rules with an aim, with an intention. So we can see that actually that's what life is. Life is simply presenting us with all of these setups, all of these. I mean, just it's like an endless variety, so that we can play the game. And we can notice then how we play the game, and are we getting what we want? First of all, what is our intention? So this, which is something that I often invite us to explore, but let's look at it here in the context of this way of perceiving. What is my intention? What am I wanting from this game? You notice how you can play a game. To consider any game, a card game, a board game, any game, and you can you can play that game infinitely many ways because there are infinitely many intentions. So what if maybe you can, I have young kids, so I have the experience of playing games with young children as an adult. And that's an interesting experience because I see that they have intentions. My intention is very different. And, they're one thing about wanting to win, which is how most of us are programmed, right? We want to win. One of the things about wanting to win, so if that's my intention is to win, then I want to look to see, is there some kind of absolute mandate that's the only correct way to play? Is that the only correct intention? Is that um, is that actually true? Or is there some choice? Can I choose what my intention is? So then when I look at it that way, I see, well, doesn't seem that there's an absolute mandate. I mean, there's no requirement really that I must win. It seems that I've lost many times in my life and I survived that. And actually sometimes losing turned out to be very good. So it can't be true actually that the only valid intention for playing a game is that I must win. So then I can look at my experience of playing games like with my children, and I can look and realize, oh, it turns out that, by the way, just in case it's not clear, when I play games with my children, winning is not even, I don't even, it's like, that doesn't even enter my mind that I want to win. It's so distant and foreign, because, what would be the benefit of that? So then I get to explore what are all the other possible ways to play the game? What are the other possible intentions? And then I get to find out, are those profitable? What are the better, more profitable intentions that I can play a game with? So I'm kind of giving you the shortcut version. You can't entirely take my word for it, but I'm just going to point you in this direction so that you can explore it for yourself and see if it's true for you. But having the intention of playing the game, and here we're saying the game is life itself, but any game up to and including the meta game of life itself, I'm going to suggest to you that a more profitable, or a very profitable, or perhaps the most profitable intention for playing the game is to learn, to learn what are my mistakes that I make, what are my what am I ignorant of, what misunderstandings do I have, what am I doing that's inefficient, that it's counter to my intention. So when that's my intention, I find that it's impossible for it not to be profitable. Like without intending to win, I actually am winning all the time, because how could I not win? Or let's not put it in terms of winning, but I'm guaranteed to succeed as long if my intention is to learn and I'm learning, I'm succeeding. What a great thing that is. But most of us are programmed. So I'm inviting you to look and see for yourself. Remember that that's always the case. So it's not just like an intellectual lecture. This is an interactive process in which I'm inviting you to look and see for yourself in your own experience. So it is an inquiry that's an open inquiry, and we're engaged in that together. So, but now look and see if you are, try on this intention. Just see what if my goal, let me try now to play this game of, let's just put some parameters around it so we can keep it a little simpler. So we'll say the game, let's play this game for the rest of this meeting. Okay, so for the rest of the formal portion, and then for those who are here for the Q&A, we'll see if we can continue the game throughout. So for the rest of this meeting, we're playing a game, and our game, the rules of the game, the parameters for the game, the intention is simply that each of us is to discover and learn as much as we can about ourselves and about reality. So how, if that, notice that the thing about a game is that a game, there's a lot I want to say about this. I'm going to try to keep it on clear. So I can't remember where I read this, but this was something I read at one point about some playing games is that gameplay produces, when this has been measured, they find that gameplay produces the same similar kinds of brain activity and hormonal activity, nervous system activity as a stressful situation, as a conflict would. So why do we not like conflict, but we do like games? Well, because there's one important difference, which is that in games, there are rules that are agreed upon by all the players. So so long as, you consider like a athletic event where you have a competitive athletic event where you've got two teams and they're playing to win. One team will win and one team will lose. So it's stressful. But as long as all the players are obeying the agreed upon rules, it turns out it can be a lot of fun. And not only fun, but it can be a great learning opportunity. So there are many benefits to these kinds of games. But then notice what happens if somebody doesn't follow the rules. Well, then all of a sudden it becomes stressful instead of an enjoyable, positive thing. So now look at the game of life. So if we view that the game of life is one in which the goal is to win, so now it's a competitive event, well, now you've got to worry about how everybody else is playing. Are they playing by the same rules? Now you notice what happens in life. Just look at your experience and you see how concerned are you with how other people are playing. Most people are very concerned about how others are playing, right? You want to know that it's fair. You want to know you don't want some people cheating. If you're paying your taxes, you want to know other people are paying their taxes. If you're doing the right thing, you want to know that other people are doing the right thing. If you're doing, you want to know that it's fair and everybody's playing by the same rules that you think are the right rules. Notice how stressful that is, because you know that there are people who are cheating, or people who don't have the same rules as you. So they're not cheating, they just don't happen to share your rules. Well, now you see what this leads to. It's war. Well, where does the war start? Does the war start out there? No, obviously not. The war starts in here. How do we know that? Because war is an activity. Who does the activity? Well, we do. What moves that activity? What is that generates that activity? Well, starts subtly within us, doesn't it? It starts within us, this tension, that tension that produces some output. Well, so then perhaps we can see that those rules are not profitable on a macro scale and on a micro scale. So on a sociological scale and on a individual scale, they're not profitable. It leads to anxiety, depression, distress. And of course, then we're blaming everybody else. I feel bad, it's their fault, which is enormously disempowering. And so it feeds into the same vicious cycle. So how do we produce change? Well, the wonderful news is we're doing it right now. So we're exploring the possibility of this new way of playing the game, which is simply that my intention is just to learn. My intention is to learn. So guess what? Now it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter how I feel. This is dangerous, I understand, but we're just playing. So you just see, though, that it's true. If my intention is just to learn, then whatever's happening is part of that game. And see how wonderful this is. When my goal, when my intention, when the rules that I'm playing by are that I am, the purpose of this game is to learn, well, then nothing can stop that. Nope, nobody else. It turns out everybody else can have whatever rules they want. And it doesn't cause any problems for me, you see. If my goal is to win, then it matters a great deal what everybody else's rules are, because I need to know that they're playing by the same rules. Otherwise, they're going to be cheating me, reducing the likelihood that I'm going to win. But everything's on the line. See, so this feeds into the sense of urgency, the speed, the fastness. But if we change the rules, which we get to do, because they're not imposed from the outside, well, then everything can change in a wonderful way. So try that on right now. Just the purpose of this game, or my purpose of this game, my rules for this game, my intention is to learn. So now see how it's true that whatever happens, you succeed. And nothing that happens can interfere with that. There's no way. There's no way that anything can interfere with that. That's really, really powerful. Completely changes the experience of life. I mean, it's a very total change. So notice right now, as you're allowing those rules to be your guiding principles for how to play this game, at least for the next little bit. What is your experience now? Notice where your attention is. Isn't that different than maybe where your attention normally is? So if your goal is to simply, well, play for a moment that your goal is to win, and notice where your attention is. I'm here to win. See that your attention is just on thoughts. I'm here to win. Well, am I winning? How do I know if I'm winning? Are they winning? Are they cheating me? Am I safe? Am I going to make it? So you got to give a lot, you become preoccupied with all these concerns and worries. But now just drop that and just make your intention to learn. Okay. So now notice where your attention is. If you're here to learn, it's sort of surprising. I don't know that I don't think we could have anticipated this, but experientially, it's all revealed. Notice where your attention goes. If you're here just to learn, your attention has to go, whether you're even aware of it or not. It has to go to this watchful, attentive, open quality, open awareness. Because you have to just be watchful. You don't, if you're here to learn, then implicit in that is, I don't already know it all. Well, let's say I know 99%. That means I don't know 1%, but I don't know what 1% I don't know. You see? So then that it turns out that knowing 99% is, in a practical sense, is the same as only knowing 1% or only knowing 0.0000001%, because you don't know what part you don't know. You don't know what part you do know. So you have to instead be in this mode of open curiosity, just watchful, open, not attached. But notice the difference. If I say, well, okay, the goal is to be non-attached. The goal is to be open and curious. Okay, go ahead and try to do that. Good luck. Because what you'll do is you'll, back to the metaphor of driving the car, it's like you've got your foot on the accelerator and now you're wanting to do something different. So you're going to do that something different, i.e. apply the brakes, but you're not ceasing to take your foot off the accelerator. So it won't yield good results. So instead, what we have to realize that I don't know, and I don't know what part I don't know. So now I just have to be watchful, curious. But the setup matters a great deal, because if I just say, well, life is unsafe and the rules of life are to win, but I don't know. Well, then I don't know is not, I can't really accept that. I can't fully admit to the truth of that, because that can't coexist actually with this, I've got to win, but I'm unsafe. If the goal is to win and I'm not safe, then there's no way that I can accept that I don't know. Instead, I have to say, well, I know something, and I'm going to double down on what I know. And this is a mistake that we make over and over and over and over and over again. We're blind, but we are blind to our blindness because we're playing to win. High stakes. Everything's very fast. So this is stretch reflex. Hopefully that's a clear, you can understand the analogy. So this thing, this same thing exists at multiple levels. So what is manifest as stretch reflex is manifest at all levels. So you can see how there's an analogous phenomenon in which, if you try to force yourself to do anything, to produce any change, if you say, I have to force myself to not know. Many of you actually know what that experience is. You have this experience of not knowing. For an instant, there's this glimpse, and there's something blissful and wonderful about it. But then what we make the mistake of doing, most of us have made this mistake, is we say, now that's the answer. That's how to win. So now I'm going to do that. I'm going to figure out how to do that, and I'm going to force it. And some of us figure out how to do that and how to force it, as strange as that might seem. We can force openness. But it's like that scene in the movie version, at least, of A Clockwork Orange, where the guy's eyes are forced open and he's forced to watch this thing that he doesn't want to watch. That's kind of what it's like. We're forcing this openness, and as a result, we're overwhelming ourselves. That overwhelm works against us. It triggers the equivalent of stretch reflex, which is a self-protective mechanism. And so now we've got one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake. And we're saying, why is this not working? Because you're unconscious and using violence. So the keys to success are conscious awareness, gentleness. I could add some others in there, but we'll just stay with those two to keep it really simple. So now, once again, let's say that really, truly, this, what's pointed to by the phrase relax into health, wealth, and happiness now, is a presently accessible reality. So now, just if we're playing a game, which we are, and so everything that's happening is part of the game, notice how the game, there is no game independent of the rules. So there's just stuff happening. But your rules for gameplay 100% dictate how you understand what it is that's happening. So this is difficult early on for most people to really understand or accept, but it's so true and so powerful once we accept it and recognize the truth of it, that what's happening is has no inherent meaning or value. That meaning and value is dictated entirely by the rules of the game. Well, the rules of the game are, we don't have to guess at them, we get to choose them. And all we have to do is see, okay, I'm playing by some rules that are unprofitable. When I play by these rules, and these things are happening, these things that are happening are perceived as bad. They're a threat because of the rules of the game. If I think I'm here to win, if I think I'm here to be right, if I think that I'm here to accumulate the most stuff, if I think I'm here to never have a challenging experience, if I think, all these rules of the game that I've believed are true, if I can see those rules turn out to produce a miserable experience, and they're not actually true. I've just believed they were true. So then notice what happens when you just try it on these new rules, abandon the other rules. So it's like we're taking our foot off the accelerator now. You have to abandon the other rules and just try on these new rules, which is, I'm here to learn. I'm just here to learn. I'm here to discover my inefficiencies, unprofitable beliefs, mistakes. Not so that not because it's a punishment, not because this is hell, but because this is a game for pleasure. This is actually, let's imagine that possibility. This is a pleasurable game. Because some of the other, you see, this, what's exposed is the other rules that we're still clinging to, because we have these other rules that say things like, well, life has to be a struggle. Life has to be hard. The only way that I can know I'm alive is if I'm fighting. And you might say, well, those are ridiculous, but just look and see that you're playing by those rules. It doesn't matter whether they're ridiculous. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. All that matters is that you are playing by those rules. And if you deny it, well, how can you benefit? You see, but if you accept that a more profitable rule for the game is that I'm here to learn, then low stakes. Nothing, it's not like it's not a winning and losing thing anymore. So then if you seeing the unprofitable rules doesn't mean you lose. In fact, it means you're succeeding because you're learning. Oh, wow, what a relief that is. So could life really be that easy? Oh, certainly could. Because as I'm pointing out, and as you can see, if you just allow yourself to see it now, that what I'm saying is true. Life is not, there's no inherent meaning or value in any of what's happening. At least not, let's put it this way, at least not in the way that we can understand with the mind. We could say maybe we could possibly understand that there's a higher level value, but for our purposes here, it's irrelevant because we're just dealing with the level of our understanding of ourselves. This is where all the struggles are. This is where we're having trouble. This is where we're, experiencing the unhappiness and pain and frustration and all that. So this is where we want to be aware. And at this level, there's no inherent meaning or value in any of what's happening that we can understand at this level. So from a practical standpoint, we can just say no inherent meaning or value. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just look and see. Just look and see that this is true, that the meaning and value that you assume is there is a relative meaning and value. Meaning, what I mean by that is that you say, well, like, surely it's true that it's an absolute truth that my purpose is to continue living, that, death is the antithesis of why I'm here. According to who? According to you. But what about to the person who's never met you and who knows nothing about you? Then they don't care. So it's a relative thing, the same as you don't care about anybody else's life who you don't know about. That might sound mean, but it's just true. You don't know about them, so you don't care. How could you? Can't care about what you don't know about. So we want to just see that all of these things are relative truths. And we want to be willing and able to simply evaluate them based on their just the in the light of open awareness, which is to say, when we run up against, so when we experience pain, and we could say that in a broad sense, pain, physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain, psychological pain, however you understand pain, when we experience pain, what is that? And it's not difficult, I don't think, to see that pain is really just because there's a mismatch between our expectation of what should be and what is. So back to this analogy of the stretch reflex, we have an expectation my muscles shouldn't be ripped from my bones. But if there's if the muscles are being lengthened and we weren't consciously choosing that, then there's a mismatch between what I'm expecting and what is happening. The muscle is being lengthened. I'm not consciously choosing that I'm aware of. So that's not a good match for what I'm expecting. I'm expecting something different. So what am I going to experience? Pain. So we have a mismatch between, and we understand this more broadly, between what I'm expecting and what seems to be happening. Well, then we can fight with what's happening, but is that going to go well? Do we have much leverage there? I would say it's not a good bet. I wouldn't play the game that way. So what other option is available to us? Well, how about, this is where we do have a lot of leverage, finding out if my expectation is a good one. But this is where hardly anybody ever looks. Instead, we're all focused on what's happening. We say, well, this shouldn't be happening, and what's happening is causing me this problem, and so I need to change what's happening, and the only way that I can get rid of my problem is to change what's happening. And you see that that's very, very inefficient and ineffective, unless the goal is to create more pain, in which case it's very effective. But we don't, those of us here, that's not what we want. So play by this new rule, try to really keep exploring that. What if the aim, my intention for this game is simply to learn? Well, now what that means is I'm shifting the attention without force, without trying, but just naturally, I have to shift the attention to simply noticing without attachment. So now I'm really curious to see, okay, what are my expectations? Well, I expected that I shouldn't have this feeling, but lo and behold, this feeling is happening. So now I have a choice. I can fight with the feeling, which I already know how that works out, or I can look and see, what is this expectation that I have? Is it true? Is this profitable? Is this beneficial? Is this helping me? Is there any reason that I should hold on to this? And what you'll find is there's not. So, well, 99% of the time or more, there's not. So then where we get stuck is then we say, well, but it feels true, so it must be true. No, that's incorrect. It, quote unquote, feels true just because it's a habit. We're running long, so I won't say much more on this, but I will just make one more brief comment about this, which is that in somatic work, there's this interesting thing where, and you've seen this about people, right? You see people who you don't necessarily consciously think it, but you on some level realize that person, and you might notice it about me. I still have this habit of holding my head a little bit to the left. You might notice that some people have a habit of their head is just always tilted a little bit or a lot. Or you might notice some other thing about them, that's just something about how they, you might notice some people have, they really have an anterior tilt, or they really have a, whatever. You notice these things about people, and you might think, oh, that's odd. That's just how that person is. Well, turns out, no, it's not how that person is. That's how that person does. It's how that person holds themselves. So there's a lot of effort going on because they're not trusting in the inherent support and structure of the forces of reality, gravity and their skeletal structure. Instead, they're exerting unconsciously 24 hours a day muscular effort that's not necessary. So now the interesting thing that I want to point out about this is that in these cases, and if you may have had this experience for yourself, if you've done any somatic work, or if you've just maybe you've happened upon it, but when these patterns are released initially, what happens is the nervous system says, this is wrong. So let's say for 20 years, you've done this. And so there's a lot of effort going on, but your nervous system is saying, this is correct. You're not doing it because your nervous system is saying this is incorrect. You're doing it because your nervous system is insisting this is correct. If your nervous system was saying this is incorrect, you wouldn't be doing it. So you're only doing it because your nervous system says this is the right thing. Okay, now you do somehow, through some means, that pattern releases. Immediately following the release of that, it's very likely, it's not guaranteed because it doesn't always happen, but it's very likely, or at least somewhat likely, that there will be clearly, to at least any outward observer, a change that we would consider to be positive, in the sense that it's a release into the inherent support. No longer is unnecessary effort being made. So the downstream effects of this will be entirely positive, only positive. There will be enormous benefits from this. But the person having the subjective experience is going to feel, if they've been doing this for 20 years, when they are like this, what they're going to perceive inwardly is that they're like this. So their nervous system is going to be saying, this isn't right. This isn't right. You've got to do this. And only when you go outwardly, it will go from this to this. But subjectively, inwardly, the person is going to experience that they're going from this to this. So this is how this is what's happening all the time, all the time. So initially, when you change the rules and you start playing with these new rules, what's going to happen? The rule being, I'm here to learn. And you start to see, I'm not dependent upon anything now. Doesn't matter, everybody else can be cheating, quote unquote. Everybody else can be playing by different rules. It doesn't matter, because it cannot in any way reduce my ability to succeed in playing by my rules. So when this occurs, there's an enormous freedom. So all that unnecessary effort that was functioning all the time before, the constant attention on, am I safe? Are they playing by the rules? Where, how am I standing socially? Is everybody approving of me? Are they loving me? Do they accept me? Am I doing the right thing? Am I good enough? Am I lovable? All that attention, all that energy that was constantly draining, suddenly it's not being siphoned off, and you are like open and powerful. Flow is occurring. But what your subjective experience may be, this is bad. And you won't realize it, but what you'll try to fix the feeling of bad by doing exactly what you've always done. So you'll think you're doing something different, but what you're going to do is go right back into the old pattern. You'll think it's something different, but you'll go right back into the old pattern. You'll think you're solving your problem, but you'll be creating the problem. So we just want to keep playing over and over and over, coming back to, okay, I want to play by these new rules. So now you just notice all the reactivity, and anytime there's a reaction, your only let's say correct response according to your new rules is simply to notice it. And this is I hope you can see how powerful this is, because it's so simple and it's subtle, but it's enormously powerful, because now everything that happens is feeding back into a virtuous cycle. Whereas before, everything was feeding into a vicious cycle. Same things happening. So we don't have to change the things, but it simply by changing the rules, it goes from being vicious to virtuous. But, and this will be the last thing I'll say about it before we shift over to the Q&A, I just want to point it out again that the tendency will be, when we are following these new rules, playing by the new rules, initially, the tendency will be to think that there's a problem that we need to solve, and we will try to solve that problem by doing exactly what we've always done to put ourselves back into the old pattern, but we'll think that we're doing something new. We're going to think we're solving a problem, when in fact what we're doing is creating the problem. When we're thinking that we need to solve the problem, we're actually out of the problem. We're out of the pattern. What's happening now is there's this openness, and we need to simply allow that to integrate. But notice that that can't be forced. If we try to force it, it's violent, and that creates this equivalent of stretch reflex, so that we contract back in, and we can't help it. So it's gentle, has to be gentle. All right, so that's it for the formal portion today, and I'm going to end this recording, and then for those who are here, we'll stay on for the Q&A.